Hi, all, welcome to the Academy of Emotional Intelligence. In this video, I am going to share with you a news item that drew my attention. A not so happy incident wherein, angered by the honking of a scooter behind, the a man in the car in the city of Bengaluru runs over the scooter with a family of three, leaving them bleeding and injured on the road. It certainly shows a behavior in a fit of rage, in a burst of temper, in a momentary anger. And here I am to discuss, to elaborate on this behavioral tendency from the point of view of emotional intelligence. So what causes us? I'm sure you must have heard of several similar such instances when people just lose it at that moment and they jump into an unpredictable action where the emotions take over the response system and suspending the rational thinking for a brief period. So let's try to analyze as to what is happening when through this sequence of events. So if we look at the sensory inputs that we receive from the external atmosphere, it goes like you have the sensory input through your sensory organs, and which is passed on to this component called thalamus. Thalamus is like a relay center which gathers the sensory inputs and sends it across to the corresponding relevant part of the brain. So it is sensory inputs to thalamus and thalamus to the brain parts. So here the traffic, the sequencing of the neural processing can be classified into two types. One, the low road sequencing, and high road sequencing. Low road sequencing, where it is sensory input to thalamus to amygdala. Amygdala is that almond shaped part in the brain which is the epicenter, which is the portion responsible for the emotional output of the brain. Whereas the high road sequence, where you have sensory input to thalamus to cortex to amygdala, where the cortex is intervening in the sequence, which offers some reasoned rational thinking, then passing it on to amygdala with some meaning, some reasonability, some explanation to the scenario. And the duration that each of these neurologically, if you see, the low road sequence takes about 12 milliseconds for the whole sequence to finish, whereas high road sequence, where the cortex is involved, where there is some amount of consciousness and awareness, some reasoned thinking being passed on to amygdala, it takes about 300 milliseconds. So when do you see that there is a higher likeliness of a fit of rage or a burst of anger happening? When the low road sequence is dominating or is outpowering the high road sequence, where the cortex is missed out and amygdala is taking over the sequence without the intervention of cortex, which is when we suspend our rational thinking and we surrender to the emotional role, and which is what is popularly called as amygdala hijack, right? Which is when the individual is more likely to act in the fit of rage and resort to adverse behavior, undesirable consequences. One more reason that we can observe here is the neural traffic, the neural the connections that pass between the amygdala and cortex, the neural connections that pass from amygdala, the emotional center, to cortex, the reasoning center of the brain, is more powerful, much stronger, more in number, the neural bundles being more in number as compared to the neural connections that pass from cortex to amygdala. What would that mean? It means, in other words, that emotions usually are more powerful than the reasoned thinking, and the impulsive behavior is more likely to take place than the reasoned behavior. And why is that so? That is the design by origin, that is the design by evolution, that is how the brain is has evolved over a period of time. Now the question is, can we bring about can we make the neural connections from cortex to amygdala, which can possibly offer some reasoned thinking and bringing about a desirable change in the behavior of an individual? Definitely yes. And that is how we can describe an emotionally intelligent mind, where the neural connections from amygdala to cortex is as strong, or from cortex to amygdala is as strong, as reliable as is from amygdala to cortex, which means the reasoned thinking, rational thinking of the individual is as powerful, as strong, as reliable as is the emotional thinking of the individual. That is what defines, that is what explains the behavior of an emotionally intelligent human being as compared to not so emotionally intelligent individual, as we see in this tragic scenario where a person is running over people on the road. How can can this the neural connections between cortex, from cortex to amygdala, be strengthened? Definitely yes. The answer is a resounding yes. And that can be done by several techniques like mindfulness, sensitizing oneself of emotional intelligence, training oneself in emotional intelligence, or breathing techniques, meditative techniques, or labeling one's own emotions as one is passing through a sensitive situation, when there is a possibility of responding to in a fit of rage, labeling timely one's own emotions, and strengthening the cortex activity as compared to the emotional activity. So that's how it explains the lack of or the presence of emotional intelligence determines an individual's quality of response in a situation which has a potential of throwing one into an adverse behavior. That's all for this video. More will be released shortly with more insights, more information to share around emotional intelligence. Till then, thank you.